He stood at the altar in his $1,000 suit, surrounded by crystal chandeliers and white roses that cost more than most people made in a month. Everything was perfect. The guests were seated. The champagne was chilled. His bride was about to walk through those doors any second. But then something happened that would shatter everything he thought he knew about power, about wealth, about control. A woman appeared at the entrance, trembling, wrapped in torn fabric that barely passed as clothing. Security tried to stop her, but his father's voice cut through the room like ice. "Let her in. She's the bride." And in that moment, as 200 guests turned to stare, as his perfectly planned future crumbled before his eyes, he had no idea that the beggar woman being forced upon him was about to teach him the most expensive lesson of his life. Because sometimes the people we look down on are the ones looking down on us, and we're just too blind to see it. Look at her standing there at the entrance, shivering not from cold, but from something else entirely. Look at the way she holds herself, shoulders back despite the rags. And look at him, Marcus Sullivan, heir to the Sullivan Empire, a man who's never been told no in his entire privileged life, now being told he has to marry this woman. Why would the most powerful family in the city force this union? What could possibly make them desperate enough to bring a homeless woman into their bloodline? And here's what nobody in that room understood yet. Sometimes the greatest fortunes are built in the shadows, and the people we dismiss as powerless are playing a game we don't even know exists. The next hour would prove that everything they thought they knew about Jessica was wrong. Let's go back 18 months. Jessica Morrison wasn't always on the streets. 3 years ago, she had an apartment, a job, a normal life. But when her mother got sick, really sick, the medical bills came like a flood. She sold everything, furniture, jewelry, even her car. She worked 3 jobs, slept 4 hours a night, and still it wasn't enough. The day her mother died, Jessica had $37 to her name and nowhere to live. She could have given up. Most people would have. But Jessica had something that couldn't be taken away. Her mother had been a financial analyst before the illness, and she'd taught Jessica everything: how to read markets, how to spot opportunities, how to turn nothing into something. So Jessica took those $37 and started studying. She spent her days in public libraries, reading financial reports, tracking stock movements, learning cryptocurrency patterns. At night, she'd sleep in shelters or under bridges, but during market hours she was sharper than any trader on Wall Street. She started small, buying penny stocks with money she made from returning bottles. Slowly, carefully, she built it up. $5 became 50, 50 became 500. She never touched the principal, just kept reinvesting, kept learning, kept growing her hidden portfolio. Meanwhile, across town, Marcus Sullivan was living a completely different existence. Born into wealth, raised with expectations. His grandfather built Sullivan Industries from nothing, turning it into a manufacturing empire worth $800 million. His father expanded it into real estate and tech. And Marcus? Marcus was being groomed to take it all over. But here's what nobody talked about: the pressure, the constant scrutiny, every girlfriend evaluated as a potential business merger, every friendship questioned for ulterior motives. At 32, Marcus had never made a real decision for himself. His father chose his university. His mother selected his wardrobe. The board determined his career path. Even his engagement 3 months ago to Vivian Chambers, daughter of a prominent attorney, had been arranged over golf and cocktails. He didn't love Vivian. He barely knew her. But that didn't matter because love wasn't part of the equation. Marriage was business. Always had been. Until the week before the wedding, when Vivian's father was arrested for embezzling client funds. Suddenly the Chambers name was toxic. The wedding was called off. The Sullivans needed a new plan, and they needed it fast because the optics of a broken engagement right before a major company merger looked weak. That's when Marcus's father, Richard Sullivan, remembered an old debt. 25 years ago, Richard Sullivan almost lost everything in a bad deal. A woman named Margaret Morrison, a low-level analyst at his company, caught the error and saved him from bankruptcy. Richard promised her anything she wanted. Margaret, humble as she was, said she'd collect when the time came. She never did. But on her deathbed, Margaret made her daughter Jessica promise something. If the Sullivans ever owed her a favor, she should claim it. Not for money, for something bigger, for a chance. Jessica, homeless and invisible, sent a letter to Richard Sullivan reminding him of his debt. She didn't ask for cash. She asked for an opportunity to prove herself. She asked for a marriage. Not because she wanted Marcus, but because she needed the Sullivan name to open doors that were permanently closed to a homeless woman. Richard saw it differently. His son needed a wife immediately for appearances. This beggar woman needed legitimacy. It was transactional, perfect. Marcus, of course, exploded when he found out. "You want me to marry a homeless woman? Are you insane?" His father's response was cold and calculated. "You'll marry her, smile for the cameras, and in 6 months we'll arrange a quiet divorce. Think of it as a business arrangement. That's all marriage is anyway." So here we are, back in that wedding hall, 200 confused guests watching Marcus Sullivan glare at the woman in rags, walking down the aisle toward him. Jessica moved slowly, deliberately, her bare feet silent on the marble floor. She could hear the whispers. Is this a joke? Why is she dressed like that? This is humiliating. But Jessica wasn't humiliated. She was focused. Because while everyone saw a beggar, she knew the truth. In her name, hidden across multiple accounts, trusts, and holdings, was $73 million. Built quietly over 18 months through brilliant trades, cryptocurrency investments, and strategic moves that would make seasoned investors weep with envy. The wedding lasted 12 minutes. Marcus refused to look at her during the vows. His jaw was clenched so tight she thought his teeth might crack. When the priest said, "You may kiss the bride," Marcus turned his head, forcing an awkward cheek kiss that made guests shift uncomfortably. The reception was worse. Marcus disappeared immediately, leaving Jessica alone at the head table, while guests pretended she didn't exist. His mother, Patricia Sullivan, approached with a forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We've arranged a small room for you in the servants' quarters, separate from Marcus, of course. Let's not make this more uncomfortable than it needs to be." Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. The first week of marriage was psychological warfare. Marcus made sure Jessica knew her place. He'd invite friends over and introduce her as the charity case my father forced on me. He'd leave expensive restaurants receipts around the house, places he'd taken other women while his wife ate simple meals in her small room. He never raised his voice, never got physical. The cruelty was surgical, designed to break her spirit until she'd beg for that divorce. But Jessica didn't break. Every morning she'd wake up at 5, go to the public library using buses since she had no car, and manage her growing portfolio. Her investments were performing beautifully. A tech startup she'd backed early was about to go public. Her cryptocurrency predictions had tripled her holdings. Her real estate investments through online platforms were generating steady returns. She was on track to hit $100 million within the year. At night, she'd return to the Sullivan mansion, eat dinner alone, and read in her room. She never complained, never argued, never gave Marcus the satisfaction of seeing her hurt. This drove him crazy. He'd expected tears, anger, something he could use to justify his treatment of her. Instead, she remained calm, almost serene, as if she knew something he didn't. 2 months in, something shifted. Marcus came home early one afternoon and found Jessica in the library, surrounded by financial reports and economic journals. "You can read?" he asked, the surprise evident in his voice. It was the first direct question he'd asked her. Jessica looked up calmly. "I can do a lot of things you haven't bothered to notice." That night at dinner, his mother complained about some company stocks underperforming. Jessica, who usually stayed silent, spoke up. "You're holding too much in traditional retail. The sector's dying." Shift to e-commerce infrastructure, the companies that build the platforms, not the stores themselves. The table went silent. Richard Sullivan stared at her. That's not bad advice. Where'd you learn that? My mother taught me before she died. She was brilliant with numbers. Something changed in Richard's expression. Recognition, maybe, or respect. Marcus saw it and felt something uncomfortable twist in his chest. 3 months into the marriage, Marcus made a mistake. He brought a woman home, someone he'd been seeing on the side, parading her through the house deliberately to hurt Jessica. But when he looked for Jessica's reaction, she wasn't in her room. She wasn't anywhere in the house. Panic, unexpected and unwelcome, surged through him. Where was she? Why did he suddenly care? He found her the next morning at a coffee shop downtown, laptop open, speaking confidently on the phone about market positions and investment strategies. The woman sitting across from her was someone Marcus recognized, Jennifer Park, one of the most successful venture capitalists in the state. When Jessica hung up, Marcus confronted her. "Who was that? What are you doing?" Jessica closed her laptop slowly. "That was a business partner, and what I'm doing is what I've been doing this whole time, building something real." "Building what? You're homeless." "I was homeless, Marcus. Past tense. Do you want to know what I'm worth right now in this moment?" The question hung in the air between them. $89 million, give or take a few $100,000 depending on how the Asian markets closed today. Marcus laughed. It was absurd. Ridiculous. "You're delusional." Jessica pulled out her phone, opened her banking app, and turned the screen toward him. The number was there. Real. Verified. $89,400,612. Marcus stumbled backward. "How? That's impossible." "No, it's improbable. There's a difference. I spent 18 months living in shelters while building this fortune because nobody takes a homeless woman seriously. Nobody gives her opportunities. Nobody even sees her. But your father's debt to my mother gave me something money can't buy. Legitimacy. A name people respect. And now that I have it, I don't need to hide anymore." She stood up, gathering her things. "I'm filing for divorce tomorrow. Not because you've been cruel, though you have been, but because I don't need the Sullivan name anymore. I've built my own. Thank you for the temporary credential. It served its purpose." She walked toward the door, and Marcus felt something he'd never experienced before. Loss. Real, genuine loss. "Wait," she turned back. "I'll hold a press conference this afternoon. Your family can control the narrative however you want. I won't fight you on it. Despite everything, I'm grateful to your father for honoring his debt to my mother. That meant something." Marcus watched her leave, and something inside him cracked open. For the first time in his privileged life, he'd encountered someone who had power he didn't, someone who'd built something from nothing while he'd simply inherited everything. That evening he did something unprecedented. He went to his father's study and resigned from the company. "I don't know who I am," he told his shocked father. "I've never built anything, never struggled, never earned anything real. I need to figure out who Marcus Sullivan is when you strip away the money and the name." His father surprisingly nodded. About time. Jessica held her press conference the next day. She announced her new investment firm, Morrison Capital, and revealed her story. Not for sympathy, but to make a point. That potential exists in unexpected places. That the people society dismisses might be the ones solving problems nobody else can see. The story went viral. Homeless woman becomes multimillionaire. It was inspiring, shocking, unbelievable, but it was also deeply, powerfully real. Marcus watched the press conference from his now empty office. He'd moved out of the mansion, taken a small apartment downtown. For the first time in his life, he had to cook his own meals, do his own laundry, figure out how to live like a normal person. It was terrifying and liberating in equal measure. 6 months later, he ran into Jessica at a charity event. She was the keynote speaker, talking about financial literacy programs for homeless youth. He waited until after her speech to approach her. "That was incredible. What you've built, what you're doing." Jessica smiled, and it was genuine this time, not the careful mask she'd worn in his house. "Thank you. How are you, Marcus?" "Honestly, I'm struggling. I started working at a nonprofit, entry level. The pay is terrible. My coworkers don't care who my father is, and I've never been happier. Also never been more exhausted or confused, but yeah, happy." They talked for an hour, really talked, as equals for the first time. Before they parted, Marcus said something that surprised them both. "I'm sorry, for how I treated you, for how I saw you, for everything. You deserved better." Jessica nodded. "You're right, I did. But you're different now. I can see it. That's what matters." They went their separate ways that night, but 3 months later Marcus called her. Not about business or publicity. He'd read an article about sustainable housing developments and thought she might be interested in investing. It was professional, respectful, the beginning of something new. Over the next year, they worked together on several projects. Marcus bringing knowledge of construction and manufacturing, Jessica bringing financial acumen and vision. Somewhere in those meetings, in those long discussions about making real change, they became friends. And then, slowly, carefully, something more. 2 years after their disaster of a wedding, Marcus proposed again. This time in a small park, no guests, no pressure, just 2 people who'd learned what really mattered. "I can't offer you anything you don't already have," he said. "You're richer than I am, more successful, more accomplished. But I can offer you partnership, real partnership, and love, if you'll have it." Jessica looked at the man in front of her, no longer the arrogant heir, but someone who'd torn himself down and rebuilt from scratch. Someone who'd learned empathy the hard way. "Ask me properly," she said. Marcus got down on one knee. "Jessica Morrison, will you marry me? For real this time?" She pulled him up, laughing. "We're already married, you idiot. Legally, we never got divorced." They'd both been so focused on building their new lives that neither had filed the papers. They looked at each other and started laughing, the kind of laughter that comes from absurdity and joy and the strange way life works out. "So we've been married this whole time?" Marcus asked. "Apparently so. We're the world's strangest love story." "Does this mean I can kiss you now? Properly, not like that disaster at the wedding?" Jessica pretended to think about it. "I suppose you've earned it." "So here's what I want you to think about. Jessica could have revealed her wealth on day 1, could have humiliated Marcus the way he tried to humiliate her, but she didn't. She waited. She let him show his true character, and when he finally changed, really changed, not because of her money but because he wanted to be better, that's when their real story began. What would you have done in her position? Would you have had the patience to wait, the strength to stay silent while building your empire in the shadows? Or would you have taken revenge the moment you had the power? And Marcus, would you have had the courage to walk away from everything you knew to become someone worth knowing? Think about the people you dismiss every day, the ones you don't see because they don't fit your definition of important. What if they're building something you can't imagine? What if the person you looked past is the one who'll change everything? Subscribe for more stories that challenge how you see the world. Stories about real people making impossible choices and finding unexpected redemption. And if you think this story's unbelievable, wait until you hear what happens when a janitor overhears a conversation that saves an entire company, only to discover the company was planning to fire him. That one's coming next week. Let me know in the comments. Are you team patience like Jessica, or would you have exposed everything sooner? I want to hear your thoughts.